Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big rostermania rumours emerging this evening, but also Dashy responding to rumours that him and Ghosty did not particularly get along last season on OpTic Drazah. He says that look, the fans just simply don't know what goes on behind the scenes and how he is as a teammate, despite all the speculation to that effect. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Just to quickly mention for you guys, actually, the second video of the day for the coming couple of weeks might well be a little bit variable in terms of when it launches, just because I have to weigh up between either making the second video in the morning and hopefully by the time that it goes live nothing crazy has happened, or waiting a little bit and then either seeing if something crazy does happen or intermingling the two, which is pretty much what we're doing this evening. So the second video will vary a bit in terms of time that it goes live, but I'm going to try and do my best, as is always the case here on the channel. Let's dive into some actual big rumours though. Firstly, with Rambo Ray, there's been lots of speculation where he might go, obviously leaving OpTic Drazah in controversial circumstances to say the least this past season, and has been linked to the Minnesota Rokkr, but has now been linked to the Seattle Surge. Now, Seattle Surge are likely going to be based in Vancouver going forwards. That's the rumour we heard a while ago. That seems to make a lot of sense now, actually, with the evidence we're about to see, especially when they might well be looking to go down the French-speaking route. So this team of Awakening, iLLeY, Huke and Standy that we talked about as a rumour earlier today, it's highly doubtful they've signed pen to paper anywhere, but I thought there might be a chance that those guys go with Rambo somewhere, either to Rokkr or some other team as a quartet, because iLLeY, you know, Rambo, that's worked in the past, might well work in the future, but doesn't seem to be the case. Those guys, I'm sure, are, if they are a quartet, looking for a team that's interested in getting them on board, but apparently that's not going to be the Seattle team. If Rambo joins Seattle or Vancouver, they may, of course may, it's not guaranteed, but they're looking at a potential French-speaking route, i.e. sign aBeZy, right? So this is the kind of Scrappy of this year's challenges. He was just killing it in the European scene. He's a Belgian player, of course, French-speaking, speaks good English as well, and I think the teams will be looking at aBeZy because why wouldn't you, right? Fundamentally, a lot of the top players in the league are getting signed by the big boys. You need, if you want to compete and actually win championships, you've got to sign players if you're a kind of mid-tier organization that have big upside that are probably getting underrated. Maybe there's high risk involved, but you've got to try something. aBeZy is one of those guys. You're also looking at Lins, supposedly from that same aWobobobs team. They're signed to that team. There would be buyouts involved, and hopefully this happens, and the aWobobobs as an organization can do well of this because like they trusted those guys, they paid them to go to events and stuff, and hopefully they get their returns for investing in this talent. And this of course might make even more sense because you've got to remember that Rambo himself is from Quebec, right? Like he speaks French, his surname's Lassier, and that actually might make an awful lot of sense. So apparently he's going to go to Vancouver, and also supposedly the players would be playing their games from Vancouver. They would, so the Titans, which I guess is their Overwatch team, right? They would play from, or they currently play from the Rogers Arena, which is likely where also the Call of Duty team would be based. What it's going to be called, I don't know, but look, Vancouver would be a tough one, I'm guessing, for internet. If you're on if you're playing against a Texas team, as we've seen with the LA teams in the past, typically struggling online, they're probably going to have a hard time playing from Vancouver. But then again, I've never been to Vancouver, but apparently it's a beautiful city and I want to go at some point, so I'm sure they wouldn't be complaining so much. So there's pros and cons to this decision if they were to go forward with it, but it does seem like it's a likely possibility as it stands. Quickly on Ghosty, he tweets out this kind of like sad Pikachu gif. And look, I mean, we're not going to go into pure GIF detectivity tonight, if that's even a word. Easy reminiscing on what could have been on the OpTic Drazah side. Easy looking at a potential falling through of certain things happening right now behind the scenes. Difficult to really determine. But we believe that, you know, he's had conversations with Boston. The rumor was yesterday he's rejected an initial offer from Boston. Doesn't mean that he's not necessarily going to get another offer from Boston, which is better, because the rumor had it that Envoy was offered actually quite a bit more to join Boston than he was to join Toronto, but he's still very keen to do the latter, despite that Boston would have actually had a pretty competitive team, and there's been some rumours as to what that might well be. Sib's getting ready to go as well, loading, he says, so potentially a new deal in the works on that front. Also, speaking of French-speaking rosters, potentially on the Seattle, newly Vancouver side, we've got to talk about Spanish-speaking rosters on the Miami Heretics. Vickles straight up tweets this out of, okay, he needs to grind a bit harder to get out of GN2, but still, well, he's playing some Counter-Strike Global Offensive, what a game, with Eric, Boom, and Metals, a trio that is rumoured to be part of the Miami Heretics next season. And in addition, we get this tweet from Heretics with the OG methods, right? This is Spanish methods with the capital Z, and here he is pointing at an old school Heretics jersey with the old school logo, and we obviously have the palm tree here, right, which is kind of thinking, well, there's a Call of Duty player, there's the old school Heretics thing, there's the palm tree for Miami, so, you know, here we go, right? It's Miami Heretics, it's probably going to be a thing, and those might be the guys on the team. Quick update on Envoy as well here. Jacob Hell comes out with this update and says, 2 notes on this to my knowledge. I can't imagine that Envoy would take this offer without the promise of the core 3 sticking together. Boston were offering more and with a solid squad. So this is the thing. If Envoy has gone for this ultra situation and Scrappy leaves, it'll be very interesting. Like, either Envoy thinks that Scrappy's going to stay and there, because I can't really think that he would want to go there if Scrappy's going to leave, because that really does throw things into a bit of chaos. It might happen and he might think that, well, the team's going to be more competitive even with a Scrappy replacement than a Boston team might be, but, you know, you're getting less money, apparently, this Toronto offer, and you've got to move to Canada, which is more taxes, right? I'm pretty sure, especially in, like, Ontario. So, you know, you're making even less money than you would otherwise. Would Envoy do that if it's not Scrappy there? I'm not convinced, to be honest. I think that he probably wants that core 3 to stay together, and that team is deadly on paper if they make that work. Also says that I don't think OpTic ended up making Envoy an offer, which makes sense, right? Because we know they were discussing with Envoy in the early days of Rostermania. We're pretty sure that's true, but you can't make an offer until, like, yesterday, basically. So, you know, technically they can't make an offer until yesterday. By that time, they'd seemingly decided that Pred is going to be the direction they go down, and this is the rumoured team of 4, which might well change, but we'll see some reasons why it might not here in just a couple of seconds. So Pred, Shotzzy, Drazah, Dashy, that is the present rumour. But just the other day, we talked about some interesting rumours that were also emerging as to behind-the-scenes conflict between Dashy and Ghosty. And this wasn't necessarily one of those guys being a bad teammate to the other. Sometimes personalities just don't work. And while Dashy has had a reputation as to not getting on with certain players over the last several years, you know, different players that he's had issues with, doesn't necessarily mean that he's being a bad teammate in this case, just that these two guys didn't get on. And my understanding is, and there's been some screenshots and stuff flying around behind the scenes that imply that this was the case, at least to a large degree, that Ghosty and Dashy didn't necessarily see eye to eye on everything, and this was the rumour that we discussed a couple of days ago, right, when they didn't get along. Multiple credible people said the same thing. So Dashy was on stream seeing these rumours gather a bit more weight and actually gave his response to it and basically says that, look, he's not being a bad teammate here, at least from his perspective, and people that talk about this stuff just, you know, don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Dude, stream, like, you know what I saw this morning, bro? I'm seeing a lot of games, you know what I mean? Like, how much people really believe I'm a horrendous teammate? You know what I mean? Is it a lot of you guys? Do you guys just think I get on and just like... I wonder what do you guys think? You guys just think I get on and just like say, fuck, I have an ego? Don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't talk to me, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna try. I shoot way too straight. I'll show up when I want, you know what I mean? Like, how do you just think I just get on and I just like, I don't give a fuck, and I don't know, I'm just confused, you know what I mean? You guys might think you know me, but you guys really don't, bro. You guys really don't. Like, pretty much shit about me, bro. I ain't gonna cap. Like, how I operate on a daily basis, how I am as a teammate. You guys don't know a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Wait, Brent, is that true? You guys beat LAT in 48 straight maps?
I don't fucking know. I don't keep it, like, actually, probably.
That's what someone in my chat just did.
Dude, I'm not even trolling. We would go, like, weeks.
Ocho.
We'd actually go weeks with, like, this is absurd. We play, like, 6 times a week. And I think we would lose, like, I swear to God, this is going to sound absurd, but we'd probably lose, like, 1 or 2 maps. Out of, like,
in a
fucking...
week span?
Yeah, it's like, how many maps do you play, like, per day? It's like 8? You play 8, because, like, in one set there's... Yeah, so what's 16 times 6?
Fucking...
64 is for...
78?
I think it's like
80. I think it's 80. I think it's 80.
80.
Yeah, I think it's 80. So then, wait, we'd go, like, I'm not even trolling, bro. This sounds absurd. We go, like, 78 and, like... Actually, maybe not 78 and 2. That sounds like... Actually, no. Like there'd be, like... I know there'd be a week where we'd have, like... Yeah, like that us. Like 78 and 2, maybe some 77 and 3s in there. 75 and 5s.
Next one, Drazah or Scrappy?
Ooh. I gotta take Drazah just because... I mean, Scrappy's nasty, and he's definitely... I don't know, though. I feel like Drazah is kind of like a... one of those players that he's just a grinder. You know what I'm saying? I think he has like a little more, or not a little, but he's got like 2 or 3 or 4 more chips than Scrappy, right? And he's also nasty at S&D.
He is.
He's also really good at S&D. He's got a ring. I mean, it's kind of hard not to go with draws. I don't know. He's just like he's like a rat to play against too. You know what I mean? Like he won't ever chow you unless he's like on a better heady or whatever. But he's kind of like what you need on a team. It's kind of what Dan does, but yeah, kind of really similar to Dan.
So as I say, and as Intel OpTic says in the replies here, that, you know, just because Ghosty and Dashy didn't get on, didn't see eye to eye on whatever things, which I do believe is probably the case, looking at the evidence that we have, doesn't mean that either one of them was a bad teammate necessarily, just means that those two personalities don't work. And maybe you can say there's a trend there with Dashy having many teammates that don't work, but I think he's made some progress in this element over the last couple of years, from the player that he was a few years ago to the player that he is today, in and out of the server. So I don't think there's too much to look at there, but I know that people will question, is this going to happen again? We've seen many players that Dashy's had these various disagreements with. If Ghosty is one of them, as it seems like it might be, could Drazah be one? Could Pred be one? And that's the question that OpTic fans will have looking at this team. You know, there's been criticisms like this from Brazilla, who says this team gets bodied, Pred and Dashy lock horns, like Drazah's the only one putting in time, no one gets in the hard points. And there will be some criticisms of this team that they will need to address and prove that they can get round on the server. You know, there's every team that forms, there's going to be some questions as to how well it's going to work, and I'm definitely far more confident that this team could do well than this fella is, but nonetheless, right, I mean, as he says, Pred and Dashy are going to lock horns. Is that going to be the case? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be the case with Drazah, and I just shared this clip for you guys as well, where he was asked the question on the podcast back in, I think it was the 7th of May or something like that. They put the episode out sometime early May, and a great question, as it turns out from Nameless in hindsight. And a great question, as it turns out from Nameless, at least in hindsight, when he asked him, Drazah or Scrappy, who do you take? And, you know, at that time, it made, especially because Drazah at that time was just unbelievable in Search and Destroy, and Scrappy was obviously very good and had just won the event at Major 3, right? I'm pretty sure. So it was a difficult conversation, but by the end of the year, probably most fans would have leaned Scrappy's way. But, yeah, he didn't hesitate for that long before saying, yeah, Drazah is the man. It does make sense. Those guys get on very well. Obviously, that, you know, Drazah's an absolute grinder, but it does seem like they see eye to eye. Now, when you are on a team, when things, you know, going gets tough, you lose events, you can, even two guys that get on very well. I mean, he mentions at the end of this clip, like, oh yeah, you know, the guys do similar things to what Dan does. And more than likely, Dashy and Ghosty got on pretty well in the early days. But, you know, when you lose and things fall apart and maybe chemistry isn't so good, then things start to suffer a little bit. So is that to say that Dashy and Drazah are going to have a big falling out if this team forms in a few months' time? No, I think it's probably more likely with Pred, just because I'm not sure the existing relationship there with Dashy is as strong as the Drazah one is. But yeah, just some interesting questions there for you guys to analyze. I did also want to share this, that Parasite had this discussion with Aches on the fact that Drazah is, in his perspective, a generational talent. And I think it depends on your definition, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, being a top 3 flex in the game, or even the best flex in the game, is not necessarily enough to be a generational talent. I mean, generational talents, by the very definition, as far as I'm concerned, only come along every so often. I mean, ideally, once in a generation, to be honest, right? I mean, how many generational talents really are there in the league right now? You're looking at aBeZy, you're looking at Hydra, you know, maybe you're looking at Pred, Simp, I guess, right? I mean, Clayster certainly counts from his generation, so, you know, it is difficult. Like, for me, generational talents are, like, that's an exclusive club. That's, like, 1 per year is a generational talent, maybe. Like, even that might be pushing it a little bit. So, I don't know what you guys think about this. Drazah, like, very good, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure I'd quite describe him as a generational talent, so I actually kind of agree with Paddy P on this one, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but very much intrigued to hear your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.